Doug, what attracted you to studying the Hebrew Bible?
Well, I think probably like a lot of our students, I grew up in a family that really revered the Bible, and they saw in it not only the history of our predecessors, but also source. So it was they treated it as a source for theology as well as ethics. And I came out of that kind of a context. My family was more conservative than I ended up being, uh, but I did inherit that type of respect and attraction to the Bible. And it was when I was in seminary that I took a course, an introductory course on the Old Testament that was, I think, about as life changing an event for me as I've had. It was a context in which we really learned the critical method, and this was back in 1960, mid 60s, and the critical method as of that point was highly historical critical, but that was not how I had learned to read the Bible, and it opened up doors that I'd not expected, and I decided to pursue it in the graduate studies after that, and that was the kind of the point of origin. I think I've kept with some of that. For example, my interest in biblical ethics stems from that. I appreciated what I regarded as kind of the high ethic that you have in the Hebrew Bible and some of the principles of social change and uh, justice remain from the very beginning prominent for me.
How has theological education changed over the years?
All right, I started teaching here in '73. I started my own divinity program in '65. There have been major changes, uh, not only in our society, but also I think in theological education. Uh, I Probably the most significant is just in terms of the perspectives and the makeup of personnel. Uh, when I started here in '73, teaching here in '73, there were not that many women students, very, very few blacks. I can't recall if there were any Hispanics, nor Asian students that we had, much less on the faculty. Um, I remember, in fact, before coming here, I taught at a seminary out in California, and I had uh, a brilliant student who was African American, and I encouraged him to go into biblical studies, uh, and sat with him for a long time, trying to find, going through the personnel of the various schools that taught, offered PhD programs in biblical studies, and found almost no one that he could consider as a model or a mentor for him on their faculties. And that was a very sad for me personally, because it's a that he wasn't able to go into the field because he would have made a difference in it. And it's in fact I told him that if there's nobody out there now, well, you could be that person for other people. Uh, he ended up going into the ministry. It was the academy's loss and the ministry's gain, I think. Um, this type of situation is completely shifted now. We're not where we need to be. I think our faculty and our student body should pretty much mirror the kind of society that we have here in the United States. Um, we're getting much closer to it now than where we had been back in the '70s. That's that I would say probably has reset the agenda in theological education in ways that are completely unanticipated.
What new developments or schools of thought have emerged over the course of your career?
Well, that follows that same trajectory, I'd say. The '50s and '60s saw, of course, the public rise of the civil rights issues movement, and soon after that, of course, uh, much more of a focus on the status of women and the role of women in professions, including our own. Uh, that would have been probably around 70 or so, or 72 when that began to hit. I remember having a lunch with Phyllis Tribble just a couple of months ago, where we kind of recounted that history. And that was for her also kind of a jar. And she was one of the key spokespersons in the study of the Hebrew Bible, with some of her publications around 1973 and 74. And it kind of, she did not have really much of an agenda as such. In this respect, that kind of evolved as it did much more generally. Since that period, as I said, I was trained really in the historical critical method, and that's the way in which almost everybody did biblical studies back up through the 60s. Beginning with that point, and especially with the questioning of authority, uh, society wide, that happened in the 60s, uh, with the rise of interest in civil rights and women's rights and so forth, but also in opposition to the Vietnam War. Uh, the structures of authority, political, social, familial, institutional, everything was up for grabs. That was almost unprecedented, I think. And at, in 1968, 69, nobody knew where it was going to end. It's what happened in our field is that with this, then we begin to have not only new conversation partners um, and researchers that had not previously been represented, but there's a radical shift in terms of method. There's a move pretty much away from historical critical method, or rather, at least a questioning of its right to be the solitary method, the dominant method. And so we begin to see then not only and this is something that I was involved in, and was again, it was kind of an evolutionary process um, to do reading in women's studies, in critical race theory, in political representation of minorities on the whole, and the class differentials and the economic disparities, power disparities globally. I mean, all of these things began to affect the way in which we do biblical studies now. This was kind of a supplemental process. Each new method began to build somewhat on the previous. For example, the liberation thought that started in Latin America in the 60s and early 70s began to infiltrate so many other areas also, and that's so now anyone who is studying the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament has to take into consideration these multiple perspectives, or their work is going to be irrelevant to many. Sure, you can do a hard nosed historical or philological analysis, and it will have a limited audience, but you're not really increasing your own. I'm saying this to any of my students. You're not really increasing your audience or the pertinence of your analyses if it's a constricted worldview. So it's a wide open field now. God knows where it's going to go, but it really is. I mean, what's postmodern? Where that's yet. Those are the cards that are yet to be played, and we have no way of knowing what's going to happen. But at least we've got, I think, more sensitivity to the variety of the world than had been the case previously.
What projects, books, or anything you want to tell us about do you have planned to begin your retirement?
Uh, yeah, a couple of things I might mention. I mean, I was just invited to do the lead uh, paper for a group on poverty at the SBL, the Society of Biblical Literature and American Academy of Religion meeting in November, and it's something that I worked on before, and so I'm planning on doing. So I've agreed to. I haven't done it yet, of course. That will be one. I have an ongoing project right now of doing a commentary on the book of Joshua. Um, I've got maybe upwards of 100 pages done so far, and I'm going to have to press on with that because that contract is due, and so that's going to be one of my major emphases. Uh, and there's a new one. Uh, as you know, I am teaching a course this semester, my last semester teaching. Kind of my swan song is a new course entitled Secularism. It's one that I've organized in a very different fashion than courses I normally teach. In this case here, I have invited 30 other faculty members from around the whole university. From I think maybe 7 or 8 different schools are represented, about 12 different departments in the college, and really a wide variety of people to come on in and talk about secularism and how it is functioning or affects their own specific area of work, whether it's history or philosophy or anthropology or psychology or business or media or uh, art, music, literature, and so forth. I mean, all of these we're dealing with, and it's of course an overview, but it's been extremely intriguing. And I have proposed to the ones who are making these presentations in the class that we try to put together a book that represents then our contributions. And I've already talked with a prominent publisher who has expressed considerable interest in it. So that's outside my field. I had no right to teach a course like this. My focus is really at 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But it's an intriguing topic that I've really been captivated before, and I've enjoyed teaching it immensely. I think that we together really have come upon some nice perspectives that deserve to be published, and I'm going to try to make that happen.